Harbor Freight just keeps dropping those budget bombshells for dust collection in the woodworking world. It doesn't matter if you're trying to collect dust from small tools like sanders, routers, track saws, all the way up to high volume dust producers like table saws or even planers. There's 4 options here from Harbor Freight that are game changers for the price for what you're getting. I'll also share some accessories that takes this dust collection to the next level. First on the list has to be the Bauer Shop Vac. That's what most people start with dust collection. As soon as you start woodworking or very shortly thereafter, you realize very quickly that it's a very messy job and it creates a lot of dust. You want to try to collect that dust for your safety as well as just cleanliness of the shop. So most people just start with the Shop Vac, and the Bauer is a good place to start. This is a 4.5 peak horsepower shop vac. It has filter, bag, everything you need to collect the dust for the most part, and it's very powerful. Out of the box, very easy to set up. You're just going to screw on 4 casters, and then all your accessories mount on board. If you only get the shop vac, one thing you'll find out very quickly is you fill that thing up pretty quick, and more importantly, you stop the filters up very fast with fine dust, which reduces the suction and just overall defeats the purpose of dust collection. So I highly recommend if you get the shop vac, there's a little cyclone separator, comes with a bucket lid, and also you'll pick up a Harbor Freight bucket or any bucket of your choice, and then you're in business. What that's going to do is going to bring that dust into that cyclone separator. It's going to spin it around, and all the heavy stuff is going to fall into the bucket first. All the lighter stuff goes into your shop vac, collected by the bag, and then it gets filtered through your filter so that filtering out as much as possible as you can with a shop vac anyway. This is a very, very good option, and it's very powerful. I actually imploded the Harbor Freight bucket because I stopped it up because there was so much suction there. Bad idea. But as you see, I threw it on a Home Depot bucket and it was perfectly fine. It worked really good. So if you're just starting out and you're on a budget, that's the first place I would start. Now the separator kit comes with everything you need. It comes with the hose, it comes with the separator itself, and the bucket lid that will fit most any 5-gallon bucket. You'll connect your shop vac hose to the top of that separator, and then the hose that comes with the separator will connect up to most tools, 2 1/4 inch fittings, which most of your contractor saws and things like that will have that on there. If you need to adapt it to smaller tools, there is a kit by Dust Right that I'll recommend that has a lot of different fittings that fits most of your tools like sanders, track saws, routers, that sort of thing. I highly recommend picking that up. I'll also link that in the description. It's a super handy to have piece of equipment in the shop if you need to adapt down to smaller tools. Third on the list is the Hercules Dust Extractor. It looks like a shop vac, but it's different. And we'll talk about what makes dust extractors different than shop vacs. Out of the box, I was quite happy to see that the Hercules Dust Extractor is fully assembled. In other words, all the casters and the wheels and everything's already on there, so you just pull it out of the box, and it comes with the floor cleaning attachments. A lot of times, Festival, these are add-ons. In other words, you have to buy that extra. Here with the Hercules, it comes with it. Now, when I bought my Hercules Dust Extractor, it was $299. Now they're $349. So depending on when you're looking at this is how much it costs. Who knows? What's very nice about the Hercules Dust Extractor, it has dual HEPA filters. The Bauer Shop Vac does not have HEPA filtration. If you don't know, HEPA filtration filters out like 99.7% of harmful particles that get into the air. For like sanders and other fine dust producing tools, I think this is one of the most essential tools that a lot of people overlook, is getting a quality dust extractor to filter out that fine stuff that's getting into our lungs. That stuff's dangerous when it gets down in there, so we want to try to get that out of the air before, or prevent it from ever getting in the air, and that's what one of the things that a dust extractor does. This dust extractor also has auto clean filtration, so it's going to automatically clean those filters with a pulse of air. The way it basically diverts the air, it just helps clean those filters, so you don't have to worry about taking those out and cleaning them or anything like that on any regular basis, or it just helps with maintenance of those filters. Also on board is where you can plug your tool in, and basically it's a tool activated dust extractor, so when you plug it in there, when you turn your sander on, that dust extractor is automatically going to power on so that it pulls in the dust as you start. You don't have to power 2 things on at once or separately. Now, one of the main things that separate a dust extractor from a shop vac is volume control, and not on the sound. I'm talking about the volume of air that is pulling through your tool. Now when I'm using it on, say, a router or even a track saw, I want max suction power, so I'm gonna max it out. I want all the suction I can get to pull in as much dust as possible. However, when I'm using a sander, I do not want that on max suction because a lot of times it will even suck to the board and you can almost pick the board up. It has so much suction. Why that's bad is it's pulling your sander down into the material that you're sanding, and it's just too aggressive. If you push down on a sander when you're sanding, what do you get? Those little pigtails. Well, you can do it, have a similar thing happen if you have too much suction on your dust extractor. I dial that down a little less than halfway, just enough to pull that dust in, but not enough that it's sucking it down to the board. That's why a dust extractor is very important, in my opinion, if you like quality finishes, especially if you're staining and things like that. The Hercules dust extractor does have tool storage or onboard storage for that floor cleaning kit, so you don't have to worry about where's it at when you get to looking for it. And this also is called a 12-gallon, but you're not getting 12 gallons because of how much room those filters take up. And then I just don't think you're ever going to get 12 gallons full of dust in there, but the capacity is 12 gallons. Comes with a very long power cord, 24 feet if I remember right. Like I'm in a 20 by 20 shop. By the time you have the hose stretched out and the cord, I can get to anywhere in the shop and do my work. Now we're talking budget dust collection, and that's where the Hercules dust extractor really shines. It is only, at the time of this filming, $349, $299 when I bought mine. But if you compare that to a similar sized Festool dust extractor, it's $935 without auto clean. But if you get a Festool with auto clean, it's over $1,000. So you can see there's a lot of price difference. I think it's over 3 times the price. It's a very good value option if you're looking for a dust extractor. The only thing I didn't care for on the Hercules dust extractor really was the hose. The hose is pretty stiff. I didn't care for that. I much prefer the Festool hose. It's got a fabric covering and it just flexes nicely. It doesn't get static buildup or anything like that. It's just a really nice hose. And on that video, a lot of people asked, will this fit the Hercules? Absolutely. It plugs right in just like it would to the Festool. So it doesn't lock in place, but it's enough friction that it's not going to come out with any normal force unless you just really pull on it. So if you want to upgrade your Hercules dust extractor, just get a Festool hose, plugs right in. Now before we talk about this dust collector, which I think you might be impressed by, there's some parts and pieces that doesn't come with this that I think's worth checking out. First, it doesn't come with a hose that connects to your tools. So this come off of Amazon. I think Peachtree Woodworking makes it. Anti-static 4-inch hose, which is what your dust collector or this Bauer has. Most dust collectors have a 6-inch and they split off to 2 4-inch ports, so you can have 2 hoses if you wanted to. This is a 4-inch hose, flexible hose. I'm in a small shop, I'm in a garage. 20 feet by 20 feet, give or take. I move my tools around, everything's mobile. Bandsaw's mobile, my planer and jointer is mobile on a cart. My table saw even has a mobile base on it, so I want to be able to move things around, and that's where this flexible hose comes in. I do not have any hard piping and do not intend to do it. Well, you do lose a little CFM because of this ridged hose. In other words, a little bit of suction because of science, just you're losing a little bit, but it's not terrible. These are accessories that are going to level up your dust collection, and it's from Carbon Method, and it's called Lightning Lock. They sent these over for me to try out, and I think you're going to like them. One thing that has plagued me is connecting this hose to multiple different tools. I have a jointer, I have a planer, I have a bandsaw, a table saw, I even have a lathe I don't use. I have a drum sander, so there's several different tools that require connections, and this is where this genius little attachment, it's game changing. And that's not even a YouTube term I'm throwing around. This is seriously good. It's next level. Let's go with next level. Not game changing, it's next level. Check it. It's a magnetic attachment that's gonna change dust collection for me in this shop forever because I'm able to use one connection on my hose to connect to all of my tools very easily and quite securely. So they have various different adapters depending on what tool you have. This one is a 4-inch hose adapter, and then you just use a hose clamp to attach it to your hose. Then from there you install the other side of this onto your other tools. I put one on my planer, one on my table saw, one on my jointer, one on the bandsaw. So now all I have to do is take this hose and get it near that connection, and the magnetic connection makes it spin the correct way and lock in place. From there, I can just use the tool. And then when I'm done, I just pull it off of there and move it to the other tool. So if I'm jointing and planing boards down for a project, then I can use this single hose to connect to both of those very quickly. It's a really cool option. There's also this fitting that has holes around the outside so you can mount this or put this on tools that you've built. In other words, I built a router table and I can put this on the back for my dust collection that will fit the hose that everything else fits. Pretty cool. I think this is a really cool option, especially when you pair it with a dust collector like this, to be able to swap tools very quickly and easily, and of course, it's magnetic and you get all kinds of fittings to choose from. Number 4 on the list is this big boy right here. Probably one of the most requested tools I've gotten recently to try out is the Bauer Dust Extractor. Harbor Freight was kind enough to send this over. No money changed hands. I'm not even keeping this, but just so you know, they sent it for me to try, and well, let's put it through the paces, see how it works. Out of the box before we assemble, one thing I've been so far impressed with, just out of the box initial impressions, is the fact that the build quality here is really good for the price you're paying for this size dust collector. So far I'm impressed. The metal here is pretty heavy duty. There's also these nice seals inside this where the separator is. Really big, nice heavy duty filter. I like to see that. And of course this heavy duty motor here, which is really the star of the show here, and we'll see how it performs. But just the look, the fit, and the feel, very surprised. Now, let's put it together. First off, obviously you gotta assemble it. First thing you're gonna do is put the casters on, and then you're gonna bolt the motor on. Make sure you've got the motor turned the correct way, because it will go either way, but you want it orientated such as this. Is orientated a word? So far so good, but before I go any further, I wanna make sure this thing works, just in case we have any issues. Last thing I wanna do is assemble the entire thing and it not power on. So let's try it. Also make sure there's no obstructions there. Don't stick your hand in there. Ooh. Wow, that thing's got some serious muscle. Let's put this thing together. Next up, pretty straightforward, we're gonna put the 3 red support arms that's vertical there. We're gonna bolt those on, and then also the separator or cyclone or whatever this red part here is, bolts on. You may need a second hand if you can't hold that up there and get a couple of bolts in it. It wasn't all that easy, but we got it done. It wasn't hard to put on, it was just hard to hold up by yourself. Next, the hose connects the motor to this separator. It does come with 2 pipe clamps or hose clamps, and you'll put those on and then squeeze them down. Next up, it's time to put the filter on. This is a 2-micron filter, so it's gonna filter out some pretty fine dust, not like dust extractor level, which is like 0.2 microns, but it will filter out down to 2 microns. There's actually a paddle inside here that when you rotate it, it will clean this filter. That way, when the filter starts getting a little bit stopped up just from fine dust, rotate that around, it's gonna clean that filter. Now, mine was actually, the paddle was actually upside down from the factory. I don't know if all shipped that way, but I just had to pull it out, flip it around, and then stick it through the top, and then there's a brace on the bottom you stick it through. Put the bolts on there, we're good to go. We're almost ready to collect some dust with this thing, almost. You ever just feel not smart? Is it my fault though? We'll see. I've been looking for the bag clamp to hold the black bag on, and guess what? It's actually the thing I thought was a seal inside here. Well, at least I figured that out. So how this works is, it's like a 30-something gallon bag here. What we're gonna do is thread it through the hoop, the hula hoop. Kind of fold it over. I don't know. It's when you're like, I thought they didn't include us. I went and looked all through the boxes. I was like, there's no bag clamp. Where's the bag clamp? There's none in here. Well, it is. They just figured out a better way to ship it, and the instructions weren't real clear about where it's, well, I didn't read them fully. Maybe they were. Could be my fault. I got it assembled. It took me about an hour and change, maybe just barely over an hour. The main thing I was looking for, that filter clamp that I couldn't realize where it went. And the way it goes on there was kind of not well explained. And I still don't even know if I have it on there right. I think I do, but we'll see. After the bag is on, then you just install your hose splitter. It goes from a 6-inch to 2 4-inch ports, and that does include a cap if you're not using one of those ports as well. You will get some reduction in suction power. That should be a shirt. Reduction in suction. You will get a little bit of reduction in suction power because this is a flexible hose. It has all those kind of a slinky-like thing, and as the air goes over it, it just reduces the suction. But I haven't noticed that I needed any more suction on any other tools other than with my other dust collector. We'll cut some boards with this and we'll see how the dust collection goes. But first, I just want to see how sucky it is. Surprisingly not that loud. Now it's a dust collector, so it does create a lot of air noise. The motor, not terrible. The noise you're hearing is actually the filter, air coming through that filter. Solid volume of air too. The bag puffs out too. When you turn it off after several uses, you may want to use your paddle to clean the filter. Basically, it's going to knock all that fine dust that gets stuck in there back down into the bag. Now, the way this thing works is obviously the dust comes in through the hose that you have it connected to a tool. Then it goes into the blower area or the suction area, up through this hose, and then the heavier stuff is going to fall into the bag. The lighter stuff is going to be airborne. That's how that dust works, but that's what this filter is for, is to filter out down to 2 microns. This does have a mobile base with 2 locking casters, and it didn't really say where to put those. I guess that's up to you where you want them. I put them on the end that the filter and all is on, and they're very easy to lock and unlock, and it moves around very easily. This thing isn't overly heavy either. The motor's the heaviest part. Everything else is fairly lightweight. Using this dust collector on the table saw, I made multiple passes on this walnut. You can see that fine walnut dust from the table saw going into the dust collector, falling to the bottom. What isn't falling to the bottom is getting filtered out again by that filter on top. Now I also used this on a planer, and I started planing this 2x12, just pine 2x12, that light colored sawdust. You're gonna be able to see that coming through in that dust collector. And you can see it's collecting all that dust. I'm doing a really good job out of this planer, keeping up with that high volume of dust. And it's also separated like it's supposed to. Now my hose did get caught with the board and got knocked off, and you see a little bit of sawdust flying around, but you know that happens. Also, I just wanted to see how much suction it could really pull, so I just threw it into my dust collector that I have and just threw it into the bin, started sucking that out of there. Done a very good job until it picked up a big chunk, which happens all the time on my dust collector that I have. It's a Laguna. It gets a chunk that stops up. There's a baffle there that is to prevent those bigger chunks from falling in there like that, and mine has it, and this Bauer has it as well. But just be aware that if you do hit a big chunk of something, it may stop it up. Not a big deal, very easy to clear, then you're back in business. The only drawback to a dust collector like this is it's not HEPA filtration. This is a 2 micron filter, so it's not getting the extremely fine dust out of the air. While using this, you can see it's actually swirling the dust around. That's what this middle piece here is for. As it's pushing the dust in there, it's actually spinning it, or starting that spin up here, and it continues it down, kind of like a tornado up in the air. It starts spinning and it drops down, similar to that, and that helps separate that dust out. You'll see the heavy stuff fall, and then of course the lighter stuff goes up top. I did use this filter cleaner and spun it around to try to see if I could knock any dust down. I did see a little bit, not sure if it shows up on camera, but you can literally see some dust particles falling from the top down into the bottom, so that is doing what it's supposed to. All it's doing really is raking those pleats of the filter, and that's just kind of jarring or shaking that dust loose. One thing I think is worth stating is price, because if you start looking at comparable models to the Bauer dust collector that has a similar capacity, that has a similar CFM suction power, the filter cleaning, like everything you're getting here, you're going to be looking at least a couple $1,000s. This one's coming in at around $500. I think it's a little less than $500, $449 if I remember right. For what you're getting, I think this is a very good budget option for a dust collector, especially for table saws, jointers, planers, miter saws, that sort of thing. I think you should consider something like this for dust collection. Now, if you're looking at the dust extractor, I think those are really geared towards sanding, routing, and track saws and things like that, just where you can collect smaller amounts of dust. But when you start trying to collect dust from a planer, that thing's gonna put out a ton of dust, and you're gonna need a way to collect that up, and this is a really solid option. Really the only thing I didn't care for about this was the setup process. It took me less than an hour. I kind of been putting this off, just to be honestly truthful, for a couple of months because I didn't want to assemble it. I was being lazy, and I just like, man, it's gonna take 3 hours to assemble the thing. It actually took about an hour. I think the instructions could have been better. That's what I really don't like about it, especially for the bag clamp. It's really not a clamp more than a pressure. It's pressure holding it up inside there. I thought it was supposed to go around the outside. Kind of looked like that on the box, but what do I know? Other than that, I think you're getting a good solid option, especially for small shops. Budget dust collection, this might be one to consider. Let me know what you think. If you want to see the Harbor Freight Hercules dust extractor review, it's right there. Click in that box, get you the big old virtual fist pump. Do you like these dust collectors? Let me know in the comments.